What happened was, as I was going through and doing research and just working with people and taking notes and really looking at what was impacting people's lives, I identified 9 different life areas. And as I went to conferences, I would watch that the excitement was built around happy hour. And so there was a lot, there really was. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's just that there's so much more to life, and we don't have to wait until we go to a conference to really enjoy ourselves or let our hair down and start doing the things that we look forward to. Because a lot of times you'd say, oh, it's a conference, and I hear mothers, I get to get away from my kids for 10 hours or 20 hours or 2 days or whatever. And so there was that excitement, but then they were getting worn out because they were also having to plan ahead to make sure that all of those needs for their family were met. So even working towards that, there were all these different things to manage. So I put the book together. It is not encouraging people to drink at all. Basically what it is it is a list of the top 10 things that I recommend to people. Because when I thought about writing a book, I said, I don't even know if I can write a book. Do I really have that much to say? And of course I do, but it just seems so overwhelming. So anyways, I put it as the top 10 things that I would share with people about life management, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. So that's going to be our focus. We're just going to focus on those top 10 because really it's something that it could take all day to talk about it. There's a lot involved in it. So that's our focus. Make sure I have the right thing here. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So in less than 55 minutes, I'm going to try to give you everything that you'll need so that when you leave today, you'll have some skills and some things to think about that you can use, because you can train, you can teach, but if people don't know how to use it when they leave, it doesn't do any good. So I really want to try to give you some things that will help you. Is it okay if I take this off? Okay. Oh, no, it's wrapped. It's okay. Or can you guys hear me if I step away from it?
Probably not.
No? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Got it.
All right. Well, this way I can see you guys, and I can kind of follow along here and look at my notes. Okay, so what I do is I do life management coaching and I do training. The reason I do the coaching is to help individuals specifically learn how to use the skills, some of them that we're going to talk about today, so that when they leave, they can put them to practice in their life and use them to manage some of the chaos that's happening on a daily basis. The training comes in because there are times that I will train individuals who work with people on a regular basis so that they understand how life management can impact those people that they're working with, so that they can then teach others. And then we have that multiplication effect, so that we're not just helping one group or one person at a time, that people that are working with people, even I've had human resource managers and things like that say, I think if I learn this, I could understand my staff of what's going on outside the office that we're not seeing, but it's being brought in and it affects things here. So that's one of the things it does. I teach people how to manage their time, their talents, and their resources. And you say, well, what do you mean by talents? Time we all get, because we all have the same amount of time every day. And we're trying to divvy it up to do the things we want, the things we have to do, and the things that we need to do. But when I talk about talents, what I'm talking about are the things that we're good at. Have you ever had somebody that knows what you're really good at and they try to volunteer your time? And so, nobody can relate to that, right? I know people that are really good with computers, or that's their job. And they enjoy working with computers, but they don't want to spend every waking minute working on other people's computers because there's a life for them outside of that. And so sometimes when people say, well, you enjoy that, and it's like, yes, I do, but I don't want to spend all of my time doing that. So it's learning how to manage our talents so that we can give to other people, we can work with other people, but we also reserve and manage our time so that we're living our life the way that we want to. And then our resources are things like, time, energy, money, where we're using those and how we're managing it, like all those people out on the soccer fields this morning. They're using a lot of their time and energy for their children, and that fits into their life areas right now. So the other thing is because we live a fast-paced, always-on lifestyle. Life management is something that helps us because, does anybody have a cell phone? Okay. How many of you have a cell phone that receives email? So every time somebody emails you, you get an instant notification. Okay. Anybody access internet? On their phones? Okay, right. So we walk around with these. And in our world today, because of the advances of technology which help us, sometimes they can also hinder us. Because have you ever gotten that text during dinner time? Or you're in a meeting or trying to do a training? I get them all the time. I kid you not, I can be training and I'll get a text from one of my kids that says, "Can I eat the corn?" And I'm like, yes, you can eat the corn. But they want that instant response. And they know, because we have these things, that we can respond immediately. But when that becomes the norm and we feel like we've always got to respond on demand, it wears us out. So that's kind of one of the other things that life management does help us with. With guilt and self-comparisons, because I was never a soccer mom. And as I drove in this morning, I see all those soccer moms out there and I'm like, I never did that. Maybe I was a bad mom. It wasn't, it's just my kids weren't interested in soccer. But just using that as an example, we can judge ourselves and compare ourselves to what other people are doing with their time and their energy and their resources. And then that wears us down because we think that we have to keep up when we don't. So that's another area that we'll cover. In addition to life management helping us with our health and our well-being. Has anybody ever been stressed out? Anybody ever gone to the doctor and had them say, "I think you're just stressed"? Sometimes it happens because stress does play a huge role in our health care. And I think as our health care is changing because of the differences in insurance and things like that, we're going to see a lot of changes coming about. I think that the better we can care for ourselves as a whole person, the better that's going to be for our health care. And lastly, it helps us stop the insanity. Does anybody ever feel like their life is just running at an insane pace and it's really hard to keep up, or you're trying to run in too many different directions, meet too many needs at one time, and so it's exhausting? Okay, so the first chapter I called Send Yourself to Time Out. And this chapter revolves around a story of my kids when they were little. Have you ever tried to put a screaming toddler in a timeout chair and they're stiffened? You have to bend their body to kind of make it fit the shape of the chair, and it doesn't work well. It's very difficult. Well, as I was trying to put one of my kids in timeout for not listening, I found myself sitting in timeout, crying because I just failed at putting my child in timeout. It did not work. And I felt that I just failed completely as a parent. It was a really difficult moment. I thought, why am I sitting in timeout? But as I sat there, I realized that it gave me a chance to think, which is actually what my son needed to do at the time. I wanted him to sit there and think about his behavior. But as a parent, I found myself sitting there. And when I wrote the book, I went back and I thought, and I said, how did that timeout actually help me? Those moments of timeout when I felt like, if you don't listen to me right now, I have 2 seconds from losing my mind. Don't make me come over there, that kind of thing. It really made a difference because we get that time to stop and think and sort out our lives. So this book is about taking a time out, and not only taking one, but learning to plan them. In those timeouts, what we do is we learn to reflect, we learn to ponder. Does anybody take time out just to be creative, to give your mind freedom to wander? Sometimes we get so busy we don't take that time. We're always thinking of things that we have to do or things that we have to be doing. And sometimes we get what we call brain lock. It's where you think you know, but you're not really sure. You can't think of it. And it's like, I just feel like what I need to do is right there. So your mind is working overtime and you're focusing on too many different things. So instead of problem solving effectively, we start being gridlocked and we're like, I really don't know what the solution is. So when we take a time out, or we plan one on our schedules, which is where the book The Think, Drink, Life came from, it's a time to go have a cup of coffee. And that's exactly what you do. You can doodle, you can think, you can get away. You're creating that space just to not feel the pressure, not feel like you have to come up with an immediate solution. Does anybody ever sit down and dream? Just to think about what you want your life to be in the different life areas, and we'll cover this here in just a minute. But it's a chance to dream, to remember what it is that we wanted to do. I know a lot of groups, in fact, one of them I asked, I said, what was it that you wanted to do when you graduated from high school? Because that was a monumental moment. We had all these plans, right? How many of us did those plans, and how did those plans change? Some of the plans changed simply because we got so busy, or simply because our lives took a different direction. And I have met with different people who say, I don't even know what I want to do anymore. They've lost touch with that because they don't have the time to be creative, to think about what they want to be doing with their time and their energy. And instead of planning what they want to do, they're just responding to it. So this is a way for us to sit down and dream again, to think about it. What is it that I want to do? What am I passionate about? What are the things that I enjoy doing that I just don't make the time to do anymore? When we do that, we also allow ourselves time to learn. Because sometimes when you take a timeout and you go to timeout, we can learn from the lessons that we've been going through, some of the life situations that we've been walking through. It gives us time to ponder and reflect them. So instead of immediately moving on to the next crisis or thinking about what's going on in our lives, we have time to ponder and reflect on what we've just come through, what life situation we just survived, what we've overcome, some of those obstacles that we're working on. That allows us to draw from our past experiences and pull them into the future. So creating a time out and having time for our minds just to sit down and think, to allow ourselves that, can be one of the most effective life management tools because it allows us to create some white space in our lives. Is anybody's calendar completely full? Have you ever seen one where every moment is accounted for and there is no white space? White space allows us to do some of this stuff where we can sit down and just grab that cup of coffee and just ponder, reflect, and set ourselves a time out. Now when I think about it, now my kids will ask me, what are you doing? It's like, I'm taking a time out. And they look at me. It's like, it's good for me. Because it allows us a time to rest and regroup. So, the second chapter, which is our lesson number 2 in life management, is to conquer overwhelming tasks. I know a couple weeks ago I walked into my basement and I looked around. Now I don't know if your basement looks like this, but mine is a collect-all from the winter. Christmas was done, so let's just get it out of the living room, put it in the basement. We'll take care of it later. Let's just move it. So all winter long, we've moved this stuff and, semi put it away. But we walk in and there's all these things in boxes, in bags. And so now we have to organize it. Well, you walk down there and you stop and you look and it's like, I don't even know where to start with this because the task seems so overwhelming. So we're thinking, should we start with the Christmas stuff first or should we start with the things that the kids no longer need because they've cleaned out their closets? Which area should we tackle first? Because if we look at it as a whole project, it seems overwhelming. So the second lesson in life management is just to start with what you know. I remember a couple times I sent my kids into their rooms. Now they're teenagers now. I have one in college and the youngest will be starting high school, so they're older. But I can still send them into their rooms to this day. And I know, I can see it in my head. They're just standing there looking and I'm like, I don't even know where to start because things are this deep. So it's like start with what you know. If you see the trash, pick the trash up and get that out of there. But it's just breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. Now in coaching, when we coach individuals, we tell them that this is called chunking. If you're planning a goal and you're looking to set your life aspirations and the direction that you want to go in, if you're looking at it as a whole, it seems overwhelming because you're like, how am I going to get there? And we don't get there right away. So what we do is we try to break our tasks down into manageable bite-sized chunks. So when we break it down, we're just biting off a little chunk. And we deal with that, and we get it done. And it's not overwhelming. We're not making ourselves feel like we have to have it finished immediately. And then we can move on to the next task. When people are running businesses and they say, I feel so overwhelmed because I don't know how to get this done, it seems like more than what I can handle, kind of like when I sat down to write the book, that was an overwhelming task. I thought, there's really a lot of things in here that can help. But the task just seems so daunting. Can I really write a book? Would I know how to do all that? And my answer was no. But when I remembered this, just start somewhere, because I use these tools in my life too that help keep me safe and help me manage my life and resources well. When I thought about it, I said, wait a minute, it's just about starting somewhere. So if I broke this down, break it into 10 different chapters, the top 10 things I would tell people, I can do that. I don't know how to go through the whole publishing process because I've never done that before, and that seems overwhelming. But if I do what I know now, as I'm doing it, I can learn a new process. So that's what it's about, is just starting somewhere. and not trying to tackle the things that we're doing all at one time, not trying to hit it all head on. We can do that at times, but if we're constantly doing that, we may reach a point where we just feel overwhelmed and we give up before we've really started. So then it's like, hey, Christine, how'd that book come? And it's like, yeah, I didn't get it done. How come? I don't know how to publish. But it didn't stop there, because just using that as an example, or with my children in their rooms, or anything in life, you're setting goals about getting through college. You're not going to accomplish 4 years in one day. You just have to take it semester by semester, class by class, project by project. But when we think about everything as a whole, it becomes very overwhelming. So when I talk to college students, I'll even tell them, break your semester down. What is it that you have to do this week? What is it that's the most pressing? What are you going to do today? What is it that you know how to do right now? Don't worry and get caught up on the things you don't know how to do, because those are things that you can learn as you're doing it. And a lot of times, as we're learning how to do it, it really helps, because we find that we're creating momentum. And then we're giving ourselves a pat on the back and saying, hey, I just did that. I didn't even know I could do that, but I figured it out. And we feel good about it. So then we have more confidence to tackle the next thing. So it kind of works as a cycle. But always we have to make sure that we're setting attainable goals. And we have to remember that even the experts, has anybody in here ever done something that you thought, I could never keep up with these people, they know so much more than I do? You ever felt like that? I know I have on many occasions. I'll see people that they're just so knowledgeable and they have so much experience. I'm like, how could I ever have an intelligent conversation with that person? But if we stick to what we know and we think about it, those people who are the experts, who really know what they're doing, we can learn from them. But we also have to remember that when they first started, they were probably in the same situation that we were. They didn't know, but they didn't quit. They set some attainable goals. They always made it a point to learn as they were moving through it. And so what happened was their experience came to them as they were doing things in manageable pieces. And pretty soon, everybody's looking at them and going, wow, you're an expert in this. A lot of times the person that you think is an expert does not consider themselves an expert. Some do. Some have very big egos, and that's a whole other training that we could do, but we won't focus on that today. So we don't want to become overwhelmed. Begin by what we're doing first. So you can take this home, and when you tell your kids or grandkids to clean their rooms, you can help them, because you can say, okay, we're going to chunk this down. We're going to break it down. What do you know how to do? I know how to pick up trash. All right, well, let's start with that. So we can teach those that we're working with, even in our families. So life management doesn't just help us, it doesn't help us in the workplace, but it helps us in our homes and with kids, because we can teach them skills then that they will pick up. And there's no better way to give a kid skills that they need than by teaching them and modeling them. So as they watch us live this way, it's like, well, mom didn't freak out. What did she do? She knew how to do this, so that's what she did first. And then she learned how to do that. Then our children are finding that they're not getting overwhelmed, and that they're learning that they can break things down to reach their goals, because what we know now is fine, but there's always going to be something that we're going to learn on a journey. We don't know everything before we take that first step. Okay, the third lesson. This is called the 9 layers of chaos. It sounds like a 9-layer cake. That's what it reminds me of. And the reason so is because with the 9-layer cake, hopefully we're getting to pick our flavors, right? I know what flavors I would want to have. But this is a graphic here, and this explains the 9 different life areas that I was talking about. So we're not just living for work and home. Within our lives, we have each of these areas. We've got rest and relaxation. We have community, our career, our health. We have spirituality, our relationships, entertainment, finances. Finances is a big life area, one that a lot of times we don't want to have to spend much time in, but it is a part of that. And then we also have self-improvement. That's another life area. So as we're living our lives on a day-to-day basis, this is what we're dealing with. So it's not just going to work, because when we're at work, have you ever had your mind focused on something at work that you had to do after work that wasn't work-related? Maybe it was your family, it was an obligation, Or maybe it was a meeting that you had in your community because you're a volunteer somewhere and you serve. So there are all these things going on all the time, and these are the things that we're trying to balance. So it's not just about a work and a home life. And this just represents one single box. That just represents one person's life. So say that's you. And how you divide your time and your energy and your resources in any of these 9 life areas is up to you in what you see as important to your life. Now, if you're single, like I said, that's just you. If you're married, there are going to be 2 of those because you have your 9 life areas and the things that are important to you and that you're doing because you've got things scheduled on your calendar. But you also have a spouse or a partner that has their life areas, and so they have their activities. Take both of those and put them on a calendar. Not just yours, but add somebody else's. That's a lot of running around, right? And it can be a lot of hit or miss. So when you're doing that, does that create calendar within that family unit? Now I'm going to show you something here. If you have a family, that's what you look like. So when I talk about surviving life, stopping the insanity, controlling the chaos. When I say the 9 layers of chaos, there's 9 different life areas. So you've got mom and dad, and you have 3 children underneath there. That's what mine would look like, except that I'm a single parent. So all those kid areas, I'm the one dealing with those and running around. And it can get really hectic and chaotic at times. So say you have the life area of health. Mom wants to go work out, and so she knows when she's going to go work out at the gym. And you have dad that wants to go work out. So dad, he says, okay, these are the days I'm going to the gym. But then you have your kids, and you say, well, if I have kids, how does health play into their life? They like to play soccer. They like to go outside and play. Those are all things that could be considered a health area in their lives. One way to find out what's important to your children is to hold a family meeting and ask them each of the life areas. Say, what's important to you about your health? A 5-year-old may say eating carrots, because I've actually heard a kid respond, eating carrots. They wanted to have vegetables because that was important to their health. Now what happened was, by uncovering that, then this mom knew that it was important to her kids to eat right and to listen to them about what they wanted in their diet. Well, that certainly is part of the life area of health. And it helped to create a family setting where that worked for the entire family and not just 1 or 2 people. But if your kids, part of their health is exercise, or your teenagers, or even adults, because there are adults that like to play golf and things like that, and that could be considered that. Having all of that down and everybody running in different directions, and then having transportation issues, because depending upon how old your kids or teens are, they still need transportation. Grandkids too. I know my parents end up helping me out quite a bit with that because I can't be in 6 places at one time. So sometimes we have to juggle all that. But we're juggling all these different life areas. Finances is something, we say the life area of finances. There could be something, a seminar or a course that you want to go to in order to learn more about retirement. There could be times of the month when it's important to put on your calendar, pay bills, because you don't want to miss that. There are some consequences when we don't pay our bills on time. We get charged with late fees and things. And if that's something that has an adverse effect on your family or the things that you're doing, then that would be something you'd want to schedule into your finances. Is to make sure that on this day and this time, I put it on my calendar, we need to sit down and pay bills. Or there's this seminar coming up, and it could teach us a lot about our finances and maybe planning for college. That would fit into that financial life area, and so you'd want to put that on your calendar. So there will be times when it might be a one-time event. There'll be times when it's going to be a regular. And then we have our relationships life area. If we take that one for another example, how many of us would like to spend more time with our families? I know that's a big one. When I ask people what is important to you, I bet 99% of people say my relationships. Well, what's important to you about your relationships? What does that look like to you? I want to spend more time with my family. I just want to have more time. Just more downtime, just to have fun when we're not running around. One of the biggest things I find with some of the individuals that I work with, their one big wish And the one thing they love the most is when there's a holiday and they don't have anything planned. There's no traveling, there's no running around, they don't have any home improvement projects planned or anything like that. But they just finally have a day to themselves where they can just be a family and they sleep late. Or they get up and have time to fix pancakes and eat a brunch or something like that. It's not planning anything grandiose, but really it's just enjoying the relationships without having to run around in 50 different directions. We find that people enjoy that more than anything. So any one of these life areas, there are going to be things that each person has planned or each person has that's important to them. The other thing I'll tell you about this is they will change. We're all familiar with the 4 seasons of the year, right? Do you guys realize that we have seasons of life? Our seasons of life depend on what life stage we're in. So when I'm talking to a family or to a mom or a dad and they're trying to work out a life management plan for themselves, I have to look at what season they're in. And I teach them how to do this. I say, well, I don't get it. Well, somebody with young children is in a different life season than I am, because my children are teenagers now. Somebody whose children are grown, they're in a life season that's different. Their demands and the demands on their time and energy is different when you have young children than when you have children that are grown and no longer at home. You'll find you have more time for things, for different things. You'll find that the importance of your life areas will even change. Because if you have a mom and dad of young children, one thing that's going to dictate how they use their time, their energy, and their resources is nap time. They cannot miss that nap time, because if they do, their afternoon is a nightmare. And they can carry on for several days until they get them back on schedule. So as that family of young children is planning their activities and where they're going to get involved and where they're going to serve and what they want to do with their time and their energy, it's very much dependent on the needs of those young children. And they need to look at, does this work for our family? Whereas me, my children are teenagers now, so I have a little bit more flexibility with what I can do. So it's important to me to spend time with my kids, but I don't have to work it around a nap time. So if we don't get to go to the movies until 9:30 at night for some family time to work on that relationship life area, that's okay, we can do that. But I would not expect a young family who has toddlers, 9:30 at night for a movie, and they're going, I don't think so, because that doesn't work for them. And then individuals that are retired, I have heard it said so many times, like, I can't wait to retire because I'm going to have all this time and energy. I'm going to be able to do all this stuff. And you know what? I find that retirees, their time is accounted for. I mean, every single minute. And they find that they're running because people say, oh, well, you have all the time in the world. And so they're managing all this stuff that other people think they have the time to do. And pretty soon their plates are so full that they're running around just as chaotic as people with kids are. So it changes. And it depends on our life area as to what we say yes to, what we say no to, what we're going to allow in, and so forth, because these life areas all come into play. And as we schedule it and as we put those things on our calendar, it can really become chaotic. And that's where that life insanity comes from. So when I talk about we're going to learn how to do more than just survive, because a lot of times when we're running around trying to live those 9 different life areas and everybody's got a different schedule, it is insanity. And so what life management does is it teaches us how to navigate through it, only do what works for our family in the season that we're in. And we're not just surviving anymore. Pretty soon we're thriving. We're doing less, but we're doing what's more meaningful and what works for our family. Okay, so about those 9 life areas. Sometimes when I do a training, I think people expect me to say, okay, I want you to tell me what's most important to you. Out of the 9 life areas, which one is most important? Could you do that? It's very difficult. People will start and go, relationships are very important to me. Yeah, that's the most important. And they're like, well, no, maybe it's my career, because if I don't have a career, then my relationships are going to fall apart. So then they start playing this game of weighing the life areas. What's more important, what's not more important? Well, they're all important, because that's what gives us a whole life, is any one of those. We want to have good relationships, and relationships are good for the person. We want to have our finances in order, because that helps us live a sane life, and then we're not worried about things falling apart and adding stress to our relationships. We want to have good health. That's important. So we can't say that one is more important than the other. They're all important. So as we learn about the unique needs of our families and our lifestyles and the season of life that we're in, we're able to divvy that up because we're going to do what works for our family and what's important to us. We're going to stop trying to do it all. And then we're going to hopefully not compare each other either. So life management is important for multitasking and for task management because it helps us not expend too much of our time doing the wrong things. You ever feel like you use your time to do the wrong things sometimes? I have people that tell me, they're like, I don't feel like I should be using my time for this. I want to be doing that. But somebody asked them to do something and they didn't know how to say no. Has anybody ever had a hard time telling somebody no? Not at all? I am so surprised. This is the perfect group. We're going to talk about that word because I dedicated a whole chapter in the book to the word no. Okay, so we are now at the fourth lesson. It's called Get a Filter. We all know that we have filters in pools. We have our water supply is filtered, right? We have filters on a lot of things. Why? Because it keeps the bad stuff out. Now, not everything that we're asked to do is bad. There are some things that we're asked to do that are really good, and most things are good. But when it's too much, when we allow too much in, it starts to have the opposite effect on us. And how I explain this is, 5 years ago, the average number of messages we received in a day was only 500. Today, we are at 10,000 messages a day, all thanks to this stuff. Because we're always receiving messages. We're getting text, we have internet access. If you're on Facebook, like my page, like my page, like my page. And it gets very difficult because you're like, I can't even keep up with everything on here. So we, in a sense, we start getting overwhelmed from all those messages coming in. And we feel like we have to keep up with them. We can't. Our minds they're not geared to function that way. And so we can find ourselves getting stressed out over it. We feel overwhelmed. And when we're overwhelmed, we run the risk of becoming burnt out. And when we're burnt out, it means that we're not finding the joy in our work anymore. We're missing the joy in our life. All of a sudden, even living becomes a task. It becomes something that we're just enduring, and that's what we don't want to happen. We don't want that excess to become overload. One way I explain this is, anybody a fan of mustard on a sandwich? From time to time, a burger with mustard and onion and pickle for me, I see that and I'm in attack mode. But it's good. So mustard on a sandwich is great. But if you look at it in excess, it's very damaging. Because when there are riots, the police and the military, what do they use to disperse a crowd that's out of control? Mustard gas. So in concentrated forms, when we use too much of something, when we allow too much to come in, it can have a damaging effect on us. Well, that's what happens when we don't say no and we allow too many things to come in. We overcommit. We don't know how to say no. We don't know how to work through things. And so we try to do everything because, well, yeah, I should do that. That's a good thing. It's for a good cause. So we might find ourselves saying yes to too many things. And before we know it, we've actually done ourselves a disservice because we're overwhelmed and overloaded. And when that happens, then we find out we're just enduring it. It's like, I wish I would have said no to that, but I gotta go because I said yes. So when that happens, we become burnt out. We don't feel the joy in it anymore. Sometimes even a job that we loved or something that we really enjoyed being a part of, it becomes a burden and we find ourselves thinking, I'm just gonna go because I have to. So we're just not experiencing and living with that joy anymore. And when that happens, we just find ourselves getting fatigued. So really, having filters in our lives is like having a spam filter. You ever check your spam filter on your email to see what's in there? There's some nasty stuff in those things. I mean, just stuff that's not good. But then there's stuff in it that's okay. You know, if it came into our lives, I guess it's all right, I could read that. But do I really need to spend my time and my energy on that? Or is there something that's more important to my family and myself that would be more meaningful, that's more in line with what's important to us, that I could be spending my time sorting through? So that's why having a filter in your life is so important. And I know you're saying, well, how do I find a filter? What does that mean? Your filter comes into play when you know what your life focus is. We have to know what we're focused on. Has anybody ever tried to get somewhere without using a map? I love it. Everybody laughs, but nobody raises their hands. I've done that before. You know, every time I come to Wichita, I can get into Wichita fine. I can find any place around here easy. I can't get out of Wichita. It's like a trap of doom. I will drive around until finally I have to pull over, and it's like, please help me get back to 96 so I can go to Hutchinson. And I'm like, oh lady, you are still lost. Well, I know where I want to go, but if I don't know how I'm going to get there, I'm going to have a hard time finding it, or I'm going to take the long route around. And there are some people that live their lives like that. They take the long route. They'll journey, but without really any direction. So they're expending all this energy, all this time, using the resources, but they're not really living for what's important to them. So your filter helps you find your focus, and it helps you maintain your focus. Finding your focus is simple. It's just really, in coaching, the most important job I do, I ask a million questions. Because by asking questions, it helps people unlock what it is they want to do. It makes you think. So really, I guess if you wanted to say it, my job is just to make people think. So some of the questions that I would ask is, okay, if you want to find your focus, the direction that you want to go, the goal that you want to reach, even if it's really simple, ask yourself, where are you going in life? If you know where you want to go, then it's just a matter of putting some plans behind it and taking some action steps every day to work towards that. It's really simple. But if you don't know, then it's kind of like wandering aimlessly. We're not really sure. We know we want to do something. A lot of times when I find somebody that doesn't really know what they want to do, it's because they've been so busy running around and just responding to everybody's needs but their own. That's when you hear somebody say, I really don't know who I am anymore. They've really lost touch with their inner self and what's important to them, what they enjoy. So we need to start looking for those kind of things to help identify them again. So then we break it down even further. We'll ask them, I say, what do you want in each of the 9 life areas? Get really specific. Tell me what you see in your relationships, ideally. What do you want those to look like? What do you want your finances to look like? What do you want your health to look like? And it could be exercising, it could be losing weight, it could be anything. Some people just say, I just want to be healthy by taking care of myself, by taking vitamins and eating better. Really, I mean, that's their goal when they think about it. So when we have our goals, and this is kind of working at it backwards, but your goals, how you arrive at them, is you know what your destination is, which is what you want to do, what you want that life area to look like, and then you take action daily to get there. Because it's great if we know where we want to go, but if we don't get in the car and drive, we're not going to get there. And so it's just, we don't have to drive 1,000 miles in one day to reach that destination. If you can do 5 miles today, do 5 miles today. So if you know that you want to get a degree, one of those steps would be, I'm going to research the schools. I'm going to pick a school. I'm going to pick a program. Then the next step might be you need to enroll. And then you need to register for classes. So every day, it doesn't matter what the destination is that you just need to know where you're going and make that your focus so that you can put some steps behind it and then every day do something that puts you closer to it. Another thing that does is it helps build momentum. How many of us are familiar with our New Year's resolutions? It's April. Is anybody still working on those? Or we're waiting for next January. Yeah, I know, me too. I was like, by now I was already going to weigh 15 pounds less. It hasn't happened. So, anyways, we know what we want to do. Building momentum in our lives helps us stay on track. Because if we're not actually pursuing where it is we want to go every day, we kind of forget about it. It loses its importance, or we think we can't get there, so we just stop trying. So I always tell people it's 99% perseverance and 1% knowledge. Sometimes I get people who say, I don't think I know enough to do that. Start with what you know.
If you persevere and you don't give up, and every time you fall down, you get back up, if you just make it your goal to get back up and get back on track, you'll get there, because the knowledge comes as you're on the journey. We don't have to know it all before we start. You'll get that as you're going. So, to find your focus, what I want you to do today, or tonight when you have some time, is just sit down and dream. You have the 9 life areas on the sheet. Think about each of the life areas and what's important to you. What does it look like? If it's spending time with grandkids or your spouse, if it's for some self-improvement, going to a seminar. See, this counts as self-improvement. So you're already on that one. If it's your health and you just want to take vitamins to be healthier, write it down, but get specific. And then tomorrow, do something. Say, what can I do right away? Well, if I want to get healthier by taking vitamins, I need to go buy some vitamins. So maybe look into that and make that one of your action steps and take that. And then you're feeling pretty good. Well, I think I'm going to add walking to that. And so then you start walking, and that creates momentum, and you're feeling really good about that. And you say, well, yeah, okay, now I'm taking vitamins and I'm walking. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change my diet a little bit. Well, as you're doing that, you're finding out, you're learning about nutrition. You'll be learning about how diet and exercise helps you because you're on the journey, but you're also creating momentum because you're feeling good. And you're actually pursuing that goal. You're working toward that dream of, say, your health, because that's a life area you want to improve. And so as you're moving toward it, you're creating that self-esteem, which builds and helps you take the next step. So you'll keep going. But all of us will fall down. We'll forget. Sometimes we'll make a mistake, or we'll skin our knees. Always get back up and go back to where it was that you were on focus, and then start planning some steps to get back there. Okay, lesson number 6. How long do I have on? How much more time? Take 45? Okay, all right, good, we're fine. I looked at my watch and I can't tell if it's stopped or not. I'm gonna, oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Awesome, okay. I'll have to make a note to myself by a watch battery. Actually, yeah, I could do that. Okay, so lesson number 6, prioritizing. Now this comes after finding our focus. So now we know what we want to do. We know what our life areas look like, or what we want them to look like. So now we've narrowed down our focus. Our focus helps us determine what we're going to say yes to and what we're going to say no to, so we don't try to do too much. We can stay on target with where we're trying to go. Lesson number 6, I wrote about prioritizing. And this is huge. Because, as I said, there are a lot of things that we can get involved in, and they're good, but they might not be a priority for us. And our priorities, again, are going to differ with our seasons of life. Because when your children are very young, your priority is to be a good mom and to make sure that they have all their needs met based on that life stage. When they're teenagers, your priorities are going to be different. Having teenagers, I know that my priorities are to watch them like a hawk. It takes a lot of time some days because I'm like, where are you going? And they tell me, and I'm like, I'm going to make sure. So it really depends. But that's a priority for me. I know that when my kids were toddlers, I wanted to spend a lot of time with them. I said, for me, that is a priority. I want to spend as much time with my toddlers as I can because I feel it's going to give them a better start to their future. So that was a priority of mine. A lot of my goals were set around that. There were a lot of activities that I could have been involved in, but I said, no, now's not the right time. I did a few, but if I looked at that activity and I said, is this a priority for me? Where are my priorities? Now, my priorities right now are to make sure I'm with my children as much as possible. So in this season, I'm going to say no to that. But there would have been other ones where I could take my kids with me. Maybe it was play dates and being involved in a play group. And I said, you know what? That does fit in with my priorities. So this activity I'm going to say yes to. But our priorities, knowing what they are, helps us create that filter. So now we have a way of knowing what we're going to say yes to because it aligns with our priorities, or we're going to know what to say no to because it doesn't align with our priorities. It may not be right for this season. So, in essence, it does. It shows us what to say yes and no to. This is how we determine how we're going to do activities that are in alignment with our goals. How do we plan it and prioritize it? Something I teach about the think drink. Well, remember when we talked about the taking the time out in the first lesson? Is to dream it, plan it, live it, master it, and become it. And simply, I'll explain it, is if we take time out to think about what we want our lives to look like in each area, our relationships, our spirituality, our finances, our health, our self-improvement, rest and relaxation, because that's an important life area. We need to take time to rest and relax where we're not always running around. We're finding that that is more and more important to people. When we think about that, we take a time out, it gives us time to think about it. How do I want to rest? How do I want to relax? What has my life been looking like lately? Am I able to do that? So we dream it, then we get to plan it. We know what we want, but now we got to make a plan because we want to get there. We don't want to drive around in circles and not get anywhere. So after we plan it, then we can start living it. And that's taking those action steps daily. Just do something that gets you closer to it. You don't have to do it all, but pick a couple of them. And just do something every day that gets you closer to what you want your life areas to look like. As you're living it, guess what? Remember when I said you don't have to know it all? You're mastering it. How? Because you're living it. And as you live it, you gain the experience you need. When you gain the experience and you're living it, all of a sudden you look back on your life and you're like, wow, I've become it. And maybe you didn't even realize that that's what you were becoming. But your character was shaped, and your life, the steps that you took helped to mold you into that. So you went from dreaming it to becoming it. A lot of times we dream it, and we might plan, one step, and then we kind of forget about it. So if we schedule those regular think drinks, and we take a regular time out to go back and think about it, and how our time and energy is being used, we can get back on track. We can keep planning it, we can keep living it, we can keep mastering it, and we'll always keep becoming it. Okay, everybody loves this one, especially the guys. When I tell them that you need to get your PMS. They're like, what? That's not what I mean. PMS is a personal mission statement. How many of you work for an organization that has a personal mission statement? Okay. They're important, right? Because within a few sentences, what do? They tell people what the organization is about. They kind of tell them what direction it's going, what's important to them, why they do it, and it's just in a few sentences. If we have a personal mission statement for our lives, as all those activities come up, and we can say, yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't want to do that, quickly, if we look at our personal mission statement, we can say, yes, this is in alignment with what I want to do, it's important, or no, it's not, and we need to leave that behind. Because if you'll notice, if you treat your life like a business, do businesses get involved in everything? Every single venture that comes their way? Yeah, it could be good, but is it right for this business? Is this really a direction that we want to go in? Is it going to help us or hinder us? Is it in alignment with what our mission statement is? If our mission statement is to help people and it doesn't help with that, then maybe it's something that we don't need to do. So having a mission statement for your life is just as important because it helps summarize it to keep us on track. Not that we want to walk around and go, here, read my mission statement. This is what I'm about. We don't want to do that. But it helps us maintain our focus so that we know we can quickly glance at it and say, no, this is my mission statement and that is way off. I need to refrain from that. So it's the same for life management. Your personal mission statement actually is kind of like your priorities. It helps you create a filter quickly that you can glance at and you'll know whether or not it's something you should do or not. Okay, so the 8th lesson, it's the 2-letter word. I notice that every time I speak, when I tell people I'm going to start by a 2 or a 4-letter word, everybody wakes up. They just do because they're like, what's she going to say? And, I'm not going to say anything bad, but it helps people get attention. So if you want to get attention at home, it's like, I'm going to start saying some 4-letter words, and your kids will be like, we better listen because something's going on. And they don't have to be bad words. You could use, silly ones, but it helps people perk up and then pay attention. The 2-letter word I'm talking about right now is no. No is a hard word for us to use because from the time we were little, what did we hear? we heard no. And it was always associated with the negative, right? It really was. If you think about it, no, don't touch that. Why are you going to get burnt? No, don't do that. It's dangerous. No, don't do this because there's too much risk. No, you don't want to do that because it's not good for you. No, 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 no. No has always been attached to a negative. So we're afraid to use it because we think it's a negative. I don't want to say no to that. I should be able to do it. It makes a big difference. But no is not a negative word, especially when it comes to life management and to knowing how to use our time and our energy and our resources. We only have so much time to give, right? We only have so much energy. And we only have so many resources. So no is not rejection. Now, a lot of times, how we can help ourselves with this is we need to remember that when somebody tells us no, they're not rejecting us. Do we sometimes think as no as a personal rejection? It's like, hey, I have this going on. Would you like to help? And they go, no, I can't. Sometimes we cling to no like that person's rejecting us. And we'll see it happen if we tell somebody, no, I can't do that right now. It's not something that I can add to my schedule. And you say no, they might see it as a personal rejection. And you think, ooh, if I say no to them, they're not going to like that. And it makes it difficult for us to use the word no. We have to remember we've got to turn off the guilt because no is not a bad word. No helps us use our time and our energy in ways that are appropriate to our priorities, to our goals, and to our family's needs. And that's really important. If we get away from that, then it actually is not a good thing for us. So we have to remember that no helps us stay on target and do what we need to do and stay away from the things that maybe we shouldn't be doing right now. Something that I want you to use, and this is great, the 24-hour rule. If somebody asks you to get involved in something or they want you to help or assist, don't respond for 24 hours. Give yourself 24 hours to take a time out, even if you're just doing it at home. Sit down with your list of things, the obligations that you have. Look at your priorities. Look at the things that are important to you in those life areas. Allow yourselves 24 hours to even talk to your spouse or your kids if it's going to affect them because of how your time and energy is used. When you take 24 hours to think about it, you're really giving yourself time to think, is this something I should do, or is it something that my gut feeling is just really telling me it's not something that we should be doing right now? Instead of getting caught in that pressure, I can't say no, I gotta say yes. It really helps buy us that time to make sure it's something good. Because even in volunteering and serving, there's something that happens where, have you ever had somebody say, yes, I'll be there, yes, I'll help you, and they can't, they just say, then they have to back out. And it kind of leaves you with a hole, right? And now you're trying to fill it with somebody else. It's much better to be upfront with somebody and say, this really doesn't fit and I just can't devote the time to it right now, than to say yes and then have to back out of it. That's very difficult to have to back out and to say, no, I made a mistake, I should have said no. You need to find somebody else. So the 24-hour rule is something that you can implement even today. So now everybody's going to be going, can you do this? And everybody's going to sit there and go, no. I'll let you know tomorrow. But it does help because then you can, and I have seen this with even married couples. Well, they say, oh, I volunteered us to do. And then it's a mess at home because they're like, no, you didn't volunteer us to do that. It doesn't work because look, we got all this, but nothing was ever communicated. And so scheduling conflicts come up. And there can be some really significant arguments and just disagreements over where that time and energy is spent, and it creates some chaos. So it's better to have the 24 hours, talk to the people you need to, get it on the calendar, see if it works, if it's in alignment, and if it's not, then you can move on. Okay, when you do that, I'll finish this up in 2 minutes, because I know we're at 10:30. Lesson number 9, no explanation. When you tell somebody no, don't give them an explanation. Don't say, no, I can't because I planned that day to rest. No, I can't because my daughter has something at 10 a.m. No, I can't. What happens when you explain, you are giving that person permission to solve your problem. They see it as a problem that you can't serve their needs. And it's not a problem. It's just that your time and energy is being used in a different way. So the best thing to do is always respond with, no, I can't. Or we already have an obligation. Or we're booked that day. and leave it at that, because then nobody's going to try to solve, I need to have you here so you can do it this way, because that this way may not work for what your needs really are. So in a nutshell, don't follow up with an explanation. Just simply say, no, we're already committed that day and I'm sorry. And that's it. Okay, lesson number 10, always allow yourself to make a fresh start. I think we all get overwhelmed from time to time. We go through busy seasons of life. We go through different seasons that can be slow. We can have a season full of rest. We can have a season where our career just takes off and explodes. And so we have to put more time and energy into it. But even if you get off track with your priorities, give yourself a break. Make a fresh start. Nothing is permanent. When we get burnt out, it's because a lot of times we fail to see hope beyond getting past this challenge or this obstacle, or man, I really messed that up. So just make sure that you're giving yourself a break. Learn to laugh. Don't try to be a superhero and do it all. We'll talk about that more in the happy hour session afterwards, because I have a game plan for you guys on that. Learn to take an emergency timeout. Set yourself in that coffee shop on purpose and take a break so that you can renew your mind and start over. And then just create healthy boundaries by using the word no, and don't feel guilty, because it's your life, it's your time and your resources and your family, and that life, you being a whole person, is what's important. Okay, that's it.